Thank you so much, Holly, and thank you all of you for your time tuning in today. My name is Kendra Pignotti, and I am the Country Interconnection Executive for the London Internet Exchange, located here in Ashburn, Virginia, otherwise known as the Token Yank. I'm really excited to talk about the great things that we have here and happening at LINX NoVA. So we have really great presenters. So with that, let's get the show going. Oops. As soon as I can share my screen. There we go. Sorry about that. LINX NoVA is a fast-growing interconnection platform that is located in multiple data centers in the Northern Virginia region. Since LINX is a membership not-for-profit organization, we embody being carrier and data center neutral. Here at LINX NoVA, we have many diverse networks connected, including major CDNs, as well as national and regional internet service providers. LINX offers first-class engineering, as well as an in-house 24/7 NOC to ensure member satisfaction, which is key to us. A single connection at LINX provides endless possibilities and benefits for your network. Here's a screenshot of our traffic growth since we started passing traffic in April of 2014. As you can see, we've had a nice, good, steady growth with traffic along with peers. You may see a slight dip approximately 6 months ago, but that is attributed to the holidays as well as the network changes to our LAN that I'm going to be sharing with you shortly. The LINX NoVA member stats on the left side of the screen show that as well, with almost 1,200 gig connected capacity and our current average traffic peaking at about averaging 65 gig per second. We are beyond excited about the growth and the future of LINX NoVA. Here's a look at our new topography, something that I am extremely proud of and excited to share with all of you, and very long time coming due to COVID. Since January of this year, we moved into Iron Mountain data centers in Manassas, Virginia, as well as adding a fourth POP at QTS in Ashburn. We've also increased our fiber ring between the data centers during the pandemic, which once again shows the dynamic engineering team that LINX employs. This was all done using remote hands being coordinated back from London. And obviously that was a first for LINX. Now on to the really good stuff, new products and so much more happening here. As of the end of May, both private VLANs and closed user groups are now available here at LINX NoVA. These straightforward layer 2 services can connect one or more members directly to another using the peering fabric, but not using public peering. Existing ports can be configured as well as new dedicated ports for these products. With existing ports, your peering service would present as a VLAN. Both are available for direct and connection members. As the diagram depicts, private VLANs is a single dedicated connection to another member, and closed user groups have the ability to connect multiple members with anywhere from 50 megabits to 10 gig capacity. We have also been working on the redesign of our member portal. This is a snapshot of what the new traffic stats area will look like. In addition to the traffic stats, members will now have a new look to the member service area, which will allow them to view and modify existing services as well as manage their own company account. This is all kind of preliminary groundwork for our future plans to bring on-demand pricing quotes and ordering functionality as well to this portal. The beta test for this is going to be starting in Q3 with plans for full deployment for all members in Q4. If you are interested in being part of the beta test group, please reach out to me, as we would love to have you be part of this testing group. We have continued to focus on automating systems to streamline configuration of ports through reducing chance of human error that is bound to happen from time to time, and also enhancing the member journey, which is very key to us as a membership organization. All these new automated processes will also bring standardization to all LINX lands globally, which will be very nice as well. Finally, we have recommitted to our membership and the community that we serve by overhauling our LINX NoVA steering committee in order to help identify trends in the ecosystem in our American footprint. We have currently seated 4 of the 5 to 7 committee members that we are looking to have on the committee. Jeff and Scott both served on the original steering committee, and Ed and Nate recently joined. Thank all of you that have already committed to taking time out of your days to help us become better here in our community. If you are interested in participating, please feel free to reach out to me. We would love more local members and partners to be a part of the steering committee. And at the end of the session today, you will receive a pop-up survey that has the option of being able to select if you're interested in hearing more about the steering committee, and I would be more than happy to share that information with you. I thank you all so much, and I am going to hand this over to John and let him take over. I dropped, hold on one second. Sorry, he has a difficult last name like myself, so I apologize, John. It's John Aufderheide. And again, with a last name like mine, Bush Picks Pignotti, I understand the difficulty in last names. So sorry about that, John, but that just means you got an extra little intro. And he is the Vice President of Interconnectivity and Peering at QTS Data Centers. John, go ahead and take it away. I'll stop sharing.
All right, thanks, Kendra. Get my screen share up here. All right, great. Yeah, thanks to the LINX team for having me speak today. I appreciate it. Just a quick intro. I'm as Kendra mentioned, I started here at QTS just within the last couple of months. But my career goes back to Global Crossing, a name some of you might remember. And I've also spent time at Google and AWS as well, with the common thread across all of my roles being peering, interconnection, ecosystem development, just kind of all things peering and connectivity. So it's something that I've kind of been drawn to since the very first foray into the industry. So something I'm pretty passionate about. So I'll go ahead and get started here. This first slide is, if you have to sum up my entire kind of position that I'm advocating for here on the deck and summarize it, this is it. So I'm basically saying there's a ongoing need, one that's been existing for quite some time, but it is ongoing, and we have this need for the peering and interconnection community to diversify and deleverage the total interconnection footprint away from what in a lot of markets is a single facility, single relationship model. And in contrast to that, I'm suggesting, and we'll be personally working on this here at QTS, that we need to focus on developing partnership-based ecosystems between carriers, hyperscalers, bringing in the subsea cables, and also working with IXs like LINX NoVA to really kind of create this whole ecosystem approach. So I'll start off with some ancient history. Having an idea of where we've been in the past certainly helps us understand where we're at today, why we're at the point we are, and also what we can do going forward. So that context, I think, is really helpful. So back in like 1999, 2000, interconnection was kind of a mess. Partners would string up costly, failure-prone local loops between sometimes multiple different sites. So you go out and buy from AT&T or MFS or TCG, some of these old names, and that was pretty tough. But Equinix kind of galvanized that interconnection landscape and allowed the networks of the day to interconnect in single facilities. So that was a huge event, and in my opinion, that more organized interconnection landscape allowed and even fueled the massive growth in internet traffic that we saw in the first decade of the 2000s. YouTube, Facebook, Akamai, Netflix, and others really took advantage of the ease of interconnection, the improved economics of interconnection that those single facilities brought to drive the massive growth that we saw. So in that first 10 years of the 2000s, the big 8 peering markets in the US grew considerably. Denver and Miami kind of bringing up spots number 9 and 10 towards the later part of the decade. And those first 10 years of expansion were really dominated considerably by Equinix, and maybe to a lesser extent Switch and Data, who was incidentally acquired by Equinix in 2010. So fast forward to 2010, and you're kind of at this point where you've got a mature interconnection market in the US. Most networks are really thrilled with the bang for the buck that you can get by going into these markets and getting connected to everybody. But some of the going into the 2010s, you start to see some of the hyper giants, maybe now more often referred to as hyperscalers or OTTs, started to see some trouble on the horizon, and they began seeking new paths for expansion. So while smaller networks, medium-sized networks were thrilled to be able to kind of have a one-stop shop in some of these big markets in terms of interconnectivity, that started to become a negative for the likes of, say, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Netflix, et cetera, because these markets were becoming too big to fail, either from a facilities perspective or space and power perspective, et cetera. So as they look to bring in their kit, their network stack, rather than just an edge pop, some of these networks would want to bring in edge caches. They want to bring in backbone equipment, DWDM equipment, and when they were starting to look at some of the buildings where all this peering was happening, they weren't able to sustain those deployments. So that's where over the from like 2011 onward, you start to see a focus from those networks that I mentioned on caching nodes, on expansion of their on-net pops into tier 2 markets to kind of peel off demand and put off the inevitable in the likes of Chicago and Dallas, where the cracks were starting to show in the architecture compared to what those facilities could provide, those interconnection facilities. So that tier 2 market expansion, think in US terms anyway, think Boston, Phoenix, Minneapolis, et cetera, those types of markets. So that helped, certainly, like I said, kind of put off some of the inevitable. But what we've seen over the last 10 years is a lot of those bigger networks like Amazon, Google, et cetera, the number of pops, the number of locations in these big markets continue to proliferate, but would often still be more or less satellites of the main interconnection facility. So I think Amazon, for example, who has quite a number of pops in the Chicago area, but they're all basically satellites of 350 Cermak. So without any of those secondary facilities becoming, or even secondary markets to a certain extent, becoming their own diverse carrier IX interconnection locations and having their own ecosystem, all roads still lead back to these carrier hotels, and the gravity well continues to grow. And that's kind of what I'm suggesting with this overall presentation here, is that that's not a good thing, and that's something that the community needs to change. So in these tier 2 markets, we've kind of observed a successful recipe, if you will, for developing a viable standalone interconnect market. Primarily being a carrier neutral, and a term that I've started using and hearing more lately, a data center neutral facility. And then also, of course, the obvious, bringing in big content, big eyeballs, the carriers to get in and out of the facility, and then partnerships with one or more of the local IXs, or if there are none present in a particular market, it's a good thing to see the community rally around potentially helping with developing a new IX. And I'd say in most US markets, that's not really, you're not going to find too many markets where there's literally no IX presence, but some of them might be struggling to get off the ground, or struggling to kind of find their growth path. And that's where a big content network or a big eyeball network or a data center company can kind of help in, kind of galvanize the efforts. So got a little ahead of myself there with the slides. So we're 20 years into kind of the normal, or what we consider the current peering model, which is heavily focused around some of these single facilities, single vendors in the top markets. So what have we learned from that? As I said in the beginning slide, I believe that the single facility or single campus and single vendor model is risky. It's problematic for a number of different reasons, because it creates technical and commercial single points of failure. And it can kind of drive architecture complexity that works, works against what a lot of the big networks are trying to do in terms of simplification of their network and streamlining. So they're kind of all working around the limitations of the carrier hotel, and that's driving complexity into their networks, which is not a good thing. But that same strategy that I mentioned about the tier 2 markets that's been in motion over the last decade or so, to peel that demand out of the tier 1 markets, to diversify and deleverage those. I see that now kind of circling back to the tier 1 markets themselves. And to clarify, by tier 1 market, I mean tier 1 interconnection market, not necessarily from a population or demographics perspective, but your typical big 8 peering markets in the US. So that's where, I see circling back to markets like Ashburn, Chicago, Dallas, the Bay Area, where there's a single facility, a single vendor that kind of dominates the ecosystem, and I see that diversification model coming back to those markets. So and the one thing that I think we've also learned from the last 10 years about how this will work. These tier 1 interconnect markets are never going to be small. They're always going to continue to be massive, no matter how many Kansas Cities or Omahas or Minneapolis you peel away from Chicago. Chicago will still be massive, partly because the demographics of the area. There's millions of people there, but also somewhat due to the hierarchical nature of a lot of the networks that dominate the traffic loads of today. They still house content sources that source from Chicago that can't necessarily be replicated to smaller markets. So as long as that's the case, we're still gonna have a huge need to see these tier 1 markets be diversified and be redundant and move away from the single vendor model. And this is where I see kind of my role here at QTS coming into play, and being a partner with the industry, with industry contributors like LINX, to help develop these markets and just add some more diversity and more options into these metros. One other thing that I think is important to call out, that has become more of an issue over the last 10 years, is the importance of the latency gap between, closing the latency gap between content sources and users. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was great just to have the bandwidth, and latency wasn't as much of a high on people's list of important things to solve for. But as bandwidth has kind of been solved, latency has become important as well. So that's for solving things like live streaming sports and events, having low latency access to the cloud locations. Gaming has become obviously a dominant force on the internet as well. So that's all become a lot more important. To kind of put a point on what I've been suggesting here, it's interesting that the announcement from Equinix that came out a couple weeks ago, that customers will be required to get out of 60 Hudson, 56 Marietta, a number of other facilities as well. But those are two pretty significant announcements in terms of important facilities. And I think that really just attests to the fact that some of these main interconnection facilities in these tier 1 locations are running out of steam from a space and power perspective, and are just kind of getting too big or too dense. It's not as applicable in, say, like an Ashburn location where it kind of grew up as a campus model, but it's still very concerning to see that in markets where you have a single building that's the center of the interconnection environment that wasn't necessarily designed from the ground up for interconnects. So last slide here is kind of looking forward, summarizing some of the points that I've made here. The industry partners, the leaders in the interconnection space, I'm hoping we'll be working together to cooperate on putting that mix of ingredients together to build sustainable colo and interconnection facilities in these top markets in the US. And the way that we do that is building facilities with expansion runway, so that we don't have this pop proliferation issue where networks have to keep scattering pops around the metro just to find places for their equipment. So we combine kind of adequate space and power with an interconnection ecosystem, so that's a one-stop shop for some of these bigger networks. The second, obviously, is working with the big content players, the big eyeball networks, to try to bring their center of gravity into some of these facilities, even if they're secondary facilities to the dominant facility. Having that duality in a market is really important, because it kind of opens the door for medium and smaller sized networks to kind of make the business case to go into additional facilities. I mentioned subsea a couple of times. I think that's important as well, just because the interconnection ecosystem isn't just about peering, it's about connectivity to the global internet, and obviously the subsea cables are a huge part of that. So I see kind of integrating the colo space power peering ecosystem along with the subsea cables, so that from a customer perspective, from a provider perspective, there's kind of seamless interconnectivity between all of those elements. And as far as as far as how I see LINX NoVA fitting into that, Kendra mentioned early on, that the data center neutral, the carrier neutral view of things that LINX has is super important. So that's a key ingredient to what I'm suggesting is the path forward here. The local exchange of traffic is obviously important, because I mentioned the latency issues, and just kind of making peering easy, making peering and interconnection easy. Not only inside the facilities, but between facilities. That's where that data center neutral concept comes in, where data center providers shouldn't be getting in the way of customers bringing in or getting connectivity out of their facility to do what they need to do. Interconnection ecosystem thrives when customers have choice, and when they have flexibility to not necessarily make a trade-off between their space and power specs and their interconnection needs. They shouldn't have to choose between the two when they're making decisions about network expansion. Last few points here, just again, LINX, the way that LINX is approaching the interconnection ecosystem, especially in NoVA, where you see 4 different data centers, really allows the customers to make the choice about where they want to go, and then have that connectivity kind of as a checkbox and not have to worry about it. And that brings a lot of resiliency or redundancy, not only to the IX, but to kind of the internet as a whole. For obviously anybody that's connected to the exchange, it just becomes a much more stable ecosystem, which is really important. Last bullet there, I mentioned the subsea integration. So Northern Virginia is, in particular, over the last couple of years, has become more and more important from a connectivity standpoint as it relates to subsea, because you have multiple cables coming in, Brusa, Maria, Donat, all landing in Virginia Beach. Eventually, Confluence 1, I think, is going to have a landing there as well. Interestingly enough, just yesterday, I saw a notification from Google about a new cable that is landing on the East Coast, but for some reason, they didn't mention the landing station location on the East Coast. But from the map, it looked like it would be either in Virginia or South Carolina. I couldn't quite tell. But all of that just kind of points to this continued need for the integration of the whole interconnection ecosystem from end to end, including subsea. So I know that I moved pretty fast there, but didn't want to stomp on anybody's time. So hopefully I didn't go over, Kendra, but that's the end of what I have at this point.
Well, thank you very much, John. There was one comment that, and
Sure.
just when you're talking about the vacating in New York and down in Georgia, there's a comment that Ashburn may come eventually, being Equinix's landlord is Digital Realty. And that when you're saying they're already kind of figuring out how they do that, that we also is also quite important as well on that. And then it says, I have another question for you. What plans does QTS have to encourage the access networks to break out of Equinix Ashburn?
Yep.
Their
Yeah,
contract.
that by access networks, I assume we're talking about MSOs, the cable companies, user networks.
Regional ISPs, WISPs, all those that are locked in contracts where LINX doesn't have contracts.
Yeah, and that's I mean, that's pretty much why I'm here at QTS. I feel like that's my mission, is to act as a bit of a nexus point for cable companies, for carriers, for IXs, the big content networks as well, and to just have those conversations with my contacts that I built up over the years, and kind of move this agenda forward and figure out ways that we can communicate. If everybody tried to get on a conference call and do all this at the same time, nobody would say a word. but I feel like I'm in a good position to have these conversations and to move things forward a little bit at a time. And that's exactly the plan, is to help draw those big centers of gravity like a Google, Comcast, Time Warner, et cetera, not out of Equinix necessarily, but at least to diversify and to start allowing this kind of friction that's been built up in the interconnection space to start releasing.
Excellent. Well, thank
Yep.
you so much for your time today, John. I'm going
Thanks,
to hand
Kendra.
over to Nate Todd, who is the Senior Network Engineer at Viasat. And thank you. He is a member here connected at LINX NoVA. So I kind of pull at him to do things that sometimes he doesn't want to do. So thank you, Nate.
Sure, no problem. As Kendra said, Nate Todd, work at Viasat, and I'm just here to briefly talk about the life as a LINX NoVA IXP member, at least from our point of view. So first, who is AS 7155? We're a satellite internet service provider that's based out of Carlsbad, California. Typical internet service provider in that we're heavy inbound traffic with our core service stacks located across North and South America, Europe, Australia, and we're growing. We're lots of eyeballs in unique places. We're kind of like a planes, trains, and automobiles skit. You can see us by land, by sea, or by plane. Why does Viasat seek IXP connectivity? I feel like we're kind of in the infancy in regards to peering still, even though we're about 5 years deep on our adventure into reaching out on that level with content providers and other members in general. As you can imagine, being a satellite ISP, our last mile is pretty intense. We're not just 3 miles away from a ROADM or a DSLAM. We're about 44,000 miles away on our last leg. So anything we can do to reduce the latency on the ground from our customers trying to reach the content that they're trying to get a hold of, that's our main goal. Like anybody else, exchanges provide an extremely economical way to connect. I can take a single link and I can connect with one, maybe 2 switches or some sort of low complexity infrastructure to the Googles, the Netflixes, the Facebooks, the heavy hitters on the content side that our customers are trying to get. And I can do that all over a single link or a single bundle in a location. There we go. Why does LINX NoVA presence, or what does LINX NoVA presence mean to Viasat? They're close proximity to one of our core service stacks in North America, so that's a huge advantage to us. They provide a gateway into the European theater for us as we grow and expand in that environment. The quality of the experience. To have we peer with 5 different internet exchanges in the North American footprint, and to have, not to diminish the experience with any of the other 4, but to have an IXP that is proactively reaching out to you to want to check in and see how you're doing, as opposed to just you're on board and set sail and we'll talk to you when you need to upgrade. The member base was attractive. They have quite, based on the breakdown of where our customers were trying to reach, LINX NoVA met a significant amount of what we called our top 10. So that was a big draw. The fact that they're vendor neutral and carrier neutral, being a nonprofit, was also a appealing piece of that. The ease of connectivity and growth was significant for us as well, to be integrated into the portal, to get our first 10 gig, subsequent 10 gig, and then upgrade to 100 gig, all was incredibly easy from that perspective. And that's it. That's who Viasat is.
That's thank you so much, Nate. And like I said, yes, I do believe in members first. How do we accommodate that, different time zones? And that is something that I think is very unique to LINX overall, whether you're dealing with LINX NoVA or you're dealing with one of the other regional exchanges in London or elsewhere that we are, you get that. We work for you as members that make it that much easier to, take a call or bug you and when it's your dinner time and my going to bed time type thing, and getting back and making sure that members have that experience. So it makes me so happy to hear that we continue to be able to provide you that level of service, because that, to me, is the most important thing and why I'm here. So that is fantastic. Thank you, Nate, so much. I don't see any questions. on for Nate. Next up is Mark Lewis, Senior Director of Ecosystem Development at Iron Mountain Data Centers. Are you ready, Mark?
Thanks, Kendra. Yes, I'm ready. Let's see if we can share this now. Just make sure that works there. Okay, good. Hopefully that's all good now. So thank you very much, Kendra, and thank you very much, LINX NoVA and the LINX NoVA community for giving us the opportunity to talk to you for a few minutes here today. We're very happy and excited to be part of this community and working with LINX NoVA. Let me just move this, so there we go. So businesses around the world have been leaving bricks and mortar behind and moving to all their processes online. Most now run core workloads on a hybrid mix of cloud infrastructure, owned compute, storage, connectivity, capability, and they mostly do that in carrier and cloud-rich data centers. To compete successfully and at scale, businesses will need to access the benefits of we believe two competing or two converging resources: open ecosystems and edge to core colocation. Data centers are some of the most critical pieces of infrastructure we now have, and the recent pandemic has, I think, only done a good thing in emphasizing that is the case. If that is a good thing that's come out of it, then it's that we recognize the importance of critical infrastructure more than we perhaps did before. As the mass migration to online working has streamed through COVID, it's become apparent to many businesses forced into more digital transactions, the ability to reach and engage with suppliers, customers, applications, and services is critical to commercial success. Recent events have highlighted how important having access to a global, diverse, neutral ecosystem really is. In this respect, the empty airports around the world have highlighted a common truth, which is also applicable, I think, to data centers. The airport building has value, sure, but what happens inside it is really what makes it valuable, and what passes through it makes it valuable. And the same is true of data centers. The building has value, sure. The value is in the volume and value of the transactions across the ecosystem that is within the data center there. And this matters probably more than the building, and increasingly will matter more in terms of new business models into the future. Of course, data centers have evolved. 20 years ago, there were secure locations for your business machines, your corporate applications, limited access to connectivity, no real transactional ability. The only real systems were high-frequency trading platforms, which needed low latency connections to exchanges. Over the last decade, the explosion in cloud and the growth in mobile commerce has meant that colocation is the natural home for enterprises, connectivity providers, platforms, and internet exchanges. Interconnection across the data center footprint, the development of open API-driven peering, the platform and platform integration has created within the typical colocation facility a diverse ecosystem for global businesses. Also, these hubs have become the epicenter of whole regions. North Virginia is an excellent example of that, which now attract a huge quantity and probably the bulk of internet traffic. Thriving open and neutral ecosystems that encourage internet exchange communities can deliver speed and choice and flexibility that businesses need to respond to fast-changing environments, for sure. These ecosystems are creating new value chains and empowering new business models, much of which is going to be focused around the transactional value of data going forward. An interesting question might be at this point is what is the evolving role of internet exchanges and this kind of community within that change? We believe that the role of data center, for instance, is once again in transition, building on interconnection, and over the past decade, the future we'll see digital value chains creating new business opportunities, new marketplaces forming, new services being innovated to support global commerce. However, this must support choice, and it must support diversity. Many of these new businesses will likely spring up around deployments of connectivity and workloads, which may also be at the edge. Usually the first question people ask about edge is what does it mean to you? The answer, I think from my side is really, well, it's more about why. Why does it matter, not what it is? For IMDC, the answer goes back to the analogy of the airport. I mentioned earlier, what the edge matters because it's the value of the customers and the transactions that pass through the edge, rather like the data center only having value if you do something with it. The edge only has value if you connect something to it. New partnering and peering and interconnect solutions are essential if the edge is going to go and drive a new commerce. Connecting edge data centers to core networks is key to connectivity. Partners and to the clouds if you can connect those together, it gives you a global ecosystem. That global ecosystem has many times the value of a single data center. The ability to interconnect and to connect those endpoints, devices, and sensors gives you the opportunity to develop a much wider framework for business. There is again a challenge there though, which is that that needs to be open, and it needs to start to move perhaps away from some of the dominance of the carrier hotels that we've seen over the last 20 years. The interesting question for this community is perhaps how to respond to that growth. Does the growth in edge mean that a greater opening up for connectivity, for peering and interconnection? Does it mean greater diversity away from the tier 1 interconnection market and carrier hotel domination? I guess the most effective infrastructure, I think, is likely to be the one that allows seamless integration between low latency, high velocity data at the edge, powerful compute, storage, and cloud diversity at the core. We see global transactional ecosystems as the bedrock of future business growth, and globally here at NoVA, we're more than globally, but also here at NoVA. I think there's 15,600 different tech companies alone in Northern Virginia. So I want to just finish by saying thank you to LINX NoVA. We at Iron Mountain are trying to build an open ecosystem that gives customers choice. We want to develop new ways to connect, interconnect, and to peer with different platforms and different providers. We value very strongly the independence of communities like LINX. And for us in the future, this kind of diversity that will give us, I believe, the strongest ecosystem to help build our customers' new business as technology continues to evolve. Thank you for listening. Thank you to LINX NoVA for the partnership, and I'll hand you back to Kendra.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank all of you that joined in today and participated. Want to thank you for your time. If you have others in the community or people within your own organization that you think may have an interest in viewing this, this has been recorded and it will be on our website as well as our LINX YouTube channel in about the next day or so. And you can also get to see me drop a name card that I needed. I mean, that's worth watching it again just to watch me make a fool of myself. So anyways, I really appreciate everybody on the panel, my marketing group that put all this together and everything like that. If you need to contact us, my email was on, but it's quite easy. It's Kendra, Kendra @linx.net. You can also reach out to marketing @linx.net, anything like that. And again, if you have any interest in communicating with any of the panelists and would like contact information, again, I would be happy to get you in touch with any of the data centers. Again, I'm working very closely with them with the complete change in our topography. I thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and look forward to seeing you in person soon. I don't want to do this any longer. Have a great day, and hope to see you all soon.